Campaign Rampant. Well, this says Dragon Rampant, but I want to talk about running campaigns with Dragon Rampant. I had asked, I dropped a video a couple of Sundays ago in which I asked for a little bit of help with this. Because Dragon Rampant, for those of you that are familiar with the channel and familiar with the game, you know this is a fairly abstract game. Your units are not built in terms of real-world numbers. You simply have strength points. And all of the units have a variable number of strength points, and that variable is fairly limited, actually. Your Spearmen, for example, will have 12 strength points. And you can see I've got 2 units of Spearmen over here. Those guys are going to have 12 strength points. And as the game progresses, they can lose those strength points. Once they lose 6 of them, then they're going to be down to... oh, there's our X-Man. Then they're going to be down to rolling half as many dice. They're either full strength or half strength. These here are elite soldiers. They will have 6 strength points. And as they take casualties, you will remove 1 guy. Now, I said, hey, that's really abstract, which doesn't quite work with the kind of campaign that we've been running with Chainmail, in which we set up a real-world campaign. We'll use the air quotes, real-world campaign, where we're marching units of thousands of guys, armies of thousands of guys hither and yon, and kind of keeping track of casualties as we go. Well, with a game like this, it's very carefully calibrated to use very balanced forces, very even forces. And so I asked the internet, hey, I don't know that Daniel Mersey has created anything beyond a mere narrative campaign for use with the Rampant style of rules. When I say mirror, understand, I'm not being judgmental, okay? Narrative campaigns are fine. They have their place, but that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to march armies across a map and trying to generate tabletop battles that are a little more organic and a little more, what would you say, authentic to the experience of being a general and trying to decide who to which forces to task where. You have to forgive the little bit of noise back there. Say hi, Biscotti. She's keeping me company for this video. No hi? Yep, she's quiet. She always gets a little bit camera shy. At any rate, I said, hey, what am I going to do with this, right? How do I deal with a situation that the game is calibrated for relatively even forces on the tabletop? And one of my viewers, a guy by the name of Jim Ozarski, Encyclopedic Knowledge, he runs a lot of tabletop games, fellow YouTuber, put together a quick 10-minute video in which he basically said, just play the game, dummy. You already know how ratios work. When you have an army on paper meet another army, just have each figure represent 10 or maybe 20 guys, right? Let's use a 25. That's what we've been using in Chainmail. Each of our figures is 25 guys. Each of our stands of 4 is 100 guys. Well, okay, great. If we have an army that's got, well, at 25, you've got 1 to 300 guys. For every 300 guys, you are going to have a unit of spearmen. In this case, we treat these as light spears. You're obviously not going to have as many elite troops, so again, you've got 150 elite troops here in this unit. You fight your battle, and let's say we've got a situation where you've got 150 elite troops and 600 spear troops. Okay, great. You roll the dice, you move your mice. At the end of the battle, so maybe these guys have lost 3 boys. When they fight their next battle, you're going to have, well, let's do 4, okay? They lost 4. You've got 200 guys. Now they're going to start the next battle with these 200 soldiers. Maybe these guys only lost 1 before the end of the battle. So they're going to come on with 125 elite. So they'll start out with 5 strength points, and these guys will start out with 8 strength points. Easy peasy. Now, Jim went into a little more detail, and he did the very similar thing to what we did. He showed us a couple of new wrinkles on this that I had never seen before, where he said, hey, really what will happen is, about a third of the guys will come back for the next fight. About a third of the guys will be wounded, and they'll come back after the next fight. So they missed 1 game. Coach is going to sit them on the bench. And then a third of the guys are dead for good. And then this guy, maybe you roll. On a 1-2, he stands up. On a 3-4, he's out. And on a 5-6, he's out for good. Something like that, right? But at any point, now we get to our next battle, and we've got, wait a second now. Now we have a very interesting question to ask. We have to go look at the rule book, because this unit is starting out the battle with 9 guys. We have 225 boys in our light foot unit. What does that mean when it's time for them to activate? Well, nothing. They always activate on the same thing. But what if they have to make a morale check? Roll 2 dice and add the total. Subtract 1 for each strength point the unit has lost in the game so far. Oh, interesting. If you lost 4 strength points, subtract 4. Subtract an extra 1 if your warband has had half of its units, half or more points of units removed from play. So 12 or more points. Well, that doesn't make a difference. Add 1 if you're going to compare your font. There you go. So that's it. All right. So really, that's the big one, though. So they get into combat, and this unit here loses 1 guy, and they have to make their first morale check. Are they making that morale check at -1 because they've lost 1 guy in the game so far? That's how the rules are written. If you're going to implement this on a campaign scale, now we need to add these 3 back in. I contend, and I asked Jim offline on social media. Well, not offline. It was on social media, so it was totally online. But I asked him, hey, how would you do it? Is it going to be just -1 for the morale check, or is it going to be -4? It's an important distinction to make. He said, I would do it this way. Well, first he said, I would do it this way, and then he argued himself into saying, no, you know what? If you start out with 9 guys, this unit is at reduced strength. Their morale is going to be affected. So right out of the gate, if they have to make a morale check for whatever reason, maybe they get charged by a unit that causes fear, they're going to be at -3 to complete that, which makes sense because they're used to fighting. They're, and all the way through basic training and on the march, they had 300 boys in their troops, and now they're seeing a whole lot of holes in the line, where their brothers in arms used to stand. So they're not going to be as confident right out of the gate. So that's one thing to be aware of, is that you are going to have to, by using a more map-based campaign, you're going to have to make adjustments like that. And it's worth thinking about how this affects the tabletop battle, because these 2 units are no longer equal. The other thing to be aware of is that there are 2 different ways to handle tracking these units. One of which, and I've done this in the past, more often with the black powder campaigns that I've run, I have said, look, this is going to be call it the red battalion. I don't know what units they used back in the medieval era. Call this the red battalion and this the blue battalion. And I said, okay, red battalion has a starting strength of 300, and we're going to track wounds per red battalion. So if these guys lose 4 over the course of the campaign, and blue battalion, well, let's just call it losing, yeah, let's do that. And blue battalion loses 5, then they'll always come onto the table as red battalion, blue battalion. But you may want to, for a campaign game, not track by unit, but just track as unit type. And this is what we've been doing in the chainmail battle. We don't worry about, the individual units of light foot or heavy foot. We just worry about how many total heavy foot do you have. We had 600 at the start of the campaign, and we've lost a total of 9 guys, meaning we are now down to 375. And at that point, we may decide, it makes more sense to bring on 1 full-strength unit. And then, well, what about these 3 guys? Then that becomes the next question, right? Do you bring on a unit of 15? And so they're going to be at what would that be? -1 for the first loss? And you might do that. You might decide, we'll just bring all 15 of these guys on. And in Dragon Rampant, I don't think that makes that big of a difference. These guys, these 15 spearmen, will roll 12 dice but they've only got 12 hit points, right? Remember, in Dragon Rampant, it doesn't matter how many figures you have. It's how many hits you can take. So in this case, I would say, all right, well, once they take 6 hits, now they're going to be rolling, even though they're at, technically, with these 9 guys, they're at more than half strength. They have lost the 6 that drops them down to rolling 6 dice, right? Alternatively, you can say, in the Annals of War, the paper strength is very different from the actual strength. Perhaps we're going to leave these 3 guys back at the camp for this battle and just bring out our regiment of 12, even though it's a mix of these guys, right? And then if we lose 3 more guys from here, well, that's okay, because the fact that we lost those 3 guys means we can just slot these 3 in, and we still have 1 unit. It won't be until you get down to less than 300 effective spearmen that you're bringing on a unit like this. And then you have to make that decision and remember, That's an important question to answer. Or maybe they've been trapped behind enemy lines. And I say, look, I've got a unit of just 5 guys. And normally, in this day and age, we would ask this question sarcastically. Well, what am I supposed to do with these 5 guys? When you're miniature wargaming, don't ask that sarcastically. The assumption is, well, there's nothing I can do, so I'm going to sarcastically ask. No, it's not a sarcastic question. What do I do with them? I would contend it's a perfectly valid choice to say, yeah, I got a unit of 5 guys here, and they're going to stand way back here on the baseline. Go get them, fellas. We're just going to kind of hang out back here, right? That's one option. What this does is it prolongs the fight. Hey, remember that the fight goes on until there's, depending on the scenario, 4 or fewer units. Well, I have a unit here. It's at half strength, but it's still on the board, right? The other thing you can do with these guys is say, you know what? I know as soon as they get into combat, they're going to get destroyed. However, there may be an enemy unit headed somewhere you don't want them to go. Drop these guys in their way. The enemy unit hits them. It has to fight them, and maybe it destroys them in one turn. But that one turn delay might mean the difference between our elite foot jumping on top of a scenario objective and getting impacted by the enemy troops. Yeah, this is a fairly useless unit, but it's not entirely useless. What am I supposed to do with these? Depends on so many factors that we can't answer that today. The point is, there is something you can do with them. And what you do with them is an interesting question that can only be resolved through the course of the tabletop battle. These are the kind of interesting questions that we should embrace and enjoy as wargamers, because they are the kind of questions that real-world commanders face. Famous example was the 101st Airborne. That was the key to the defense of the Battle of the Bulge. They were spent. They were exhausted. They didn't have the replacements. Put them someplace quiet that the Germans will never attack. Oh, the Germans attacked there? Maybe these 5 spearmen perform heroically and stand their ground for a big 3 turns, which gives these guys enough time to get up. You don't know until you play the scenario. But it's worth throwing, it might be worth throwing them into that meat grinder. Even as expendables, they can do some good. Finding where you can use all of your units to their best ability is part of the challenge. Don't shirk from it. Embrace it. Till next time, I'm praying for you.